Before we start talking about lines of code and variables and objects and such like, what is JavaScript? In short, it's a programming language that adds interactivity to your web pages. A static web page looks the same today as it does next week, as it does next month, as it does next year. So why should anybody come back to your site? If your site has interactivity, it's worth visiting. It's also known as a scripting language. A programming language is a general category. Some programming languages are scripting languages. Scripting languages can be thought of by some people as the easy category of programming, but it really is programming just in the same way. What it doesn't require is a compiler or a fancy development environment. It's just a program that's included on an HTML page, or it can be in an external file that's loaded at the same time as an HTML page. Throughout this course, primarily, we're going to be using external JavaScripts for a variety of reasons that will be covered later. So it's just text on pages. They're interpreted and then they're run by web browsers. One of the things that's so handy about JavaScript is that web servers keep pretty busy. They're busy handing web pages off to people all over the world, and then they get results back and they have to deal with them. Anytime you're using JavaScript to take some of that load off your web server, the surfer's machine is doing some of the work as well as your web server. It's worth pointing out that JavaScript is not Java. Java is a different programming language. At one point, when it was first invented at Netscape referred to it as LiveScript. And then there was a point in time where all anybody wanted to talk about in the tech world was Java. Java was going to cure cancer and feed the hungry and bring about world peace. And in order to try and get some of the buzz, Netscape marketing changed the name of LiveScript to be JavaScript. So pretty much what's happened is they got some of the buzz and they've managed to confuse people for more than 10 years now. So if you came here hoping to learn about Java, you might possibly be in the wrong place. This course is on JavaScript. So what can you do with JavaScript? As I was saying, you can create an active user interface. Things will happen based on user input. So it appears that it's much more responsive. You can validate user input on forms. Have you ever wanted to buy something at a website and you put in your credit card and you put in your first name and your last name and your address and all the things you wanted to buy and your mother's maiden name and the security code off your card, and you entered that all in and it went off to the web server and you waited and you waited and you waited, and then it came back and it told you that it didn't like that you'd put spaces in your credit card? There's no reason for that. You can easily clean that stuff up with JavaScript. It never needs to go back to the server at all. What happens then is that users perceive your site as faster responding and more friendly. And both of those are good things. So yes, you need validation on the server side always, because there are people without JavaScript. But if you do it on the user side as well, you get a much higher level of user satisfaction. You can create custom HTML pages on the fly. Pages can appear based on information that the browser knows about you, on cookies, on time of day, on the day of the week, what region you're coming from, and so on and so on. And because it's customized to you, it's just going to be a more personal experience. And you can control web browsers. In general, overall, people have been very unhappy with JavaScript taking over your web browser and doing things. But if you know what you're doing and you have a good interface reason for doing those things, it can be part of the experience. What can't JavaScript do? There's a number of things that JavaScript cannot do, and there's a lot of fear-mongering about JavaScript. For instance, JavaScript on its own cannot talk to a database. It cannot write to files outside of cookies, so you don't have to worry about it keeping track of all kinds of things. On the other hand, that's a downside also. You cannot do things like keep a visitor counter via JavaScript because it cannot write out anything back to the server. It cannot keep a counter because it cannot write to files. JavaScript also cannot keep track of state. It cannot keep track of where you are in a website, where you are in a purchasing routine, where you are in any kind of given transaction. It can't keep track of that except with cookies. And cookies are the one exception of what it can write and then read in again. So in terms of controlling the user's experience, here's just a little bit more on that. You can tailor the experience so that it's more personal, different content based on day, time. It's also based on the browser. You can, with JavaScript, check and see what type of browser they have, what the user's browser is capable of, and then give them as rich an experience as their browser can handle. You can do dynamic pages without having to resort to CGIs. That's server-side programming. user interface elements, the most common use of JavaScript in the world is those image rollovers. That's the one thing most people want to learn how to do, and yes, we do cover that in this course. But user interface elements that react to user input is a very strong use of JavaScript, very common use, very powerful use. Another is pop-up navigation menus. And of course, validating input is always important in terms of pre-processing forms so that it makes the user's life just a little bit easier.